was staring at my phone in my pitch-black security trailer at 2 in the morning when a thick, dripping wet palm slammed against the second-story window right above my head, followed immediately by a Reddit notification that read, "He just looked up." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird as I sat paralyzed in the rolling desk chair, the faint blue glow of my phone screen illuminating the dust motes hanging in the cold, stale air of the Decatur grain terminal. I had taken this overnight security gig 3 weeks ago because it paid $22 an hour just to sit in a climate-controlled trailer on the edge of a 100-acre industrial lot in rural Illinois and scroll through my phone. But tonight, the crushing silence of the Midwestern countryside felt less like peace and more like a predator holding its breath. To pass the grueling hours between midnight and dawn, I usually spend my shifts on our /unexplained or our /let's not meet, reading eerie encounters from truckers and night shift workers. But 20 minutes ago, while refreshing the local subreddit for Central Illinois, a post titled, "Watching the Night Watchman at the Decatur Silos" caught my eye. At first, I assumed it was a prank by one of the local high school kids who occasionally tried to breach the perimeter fence to spray paint the concrete towers. But when I tapped the thread, the original poster had detailed my exact uniform, down to the faded blue canvas jacket and the green insulated thermos sitting on my desk. My breath hitched as I reread the text, telling myself it was just a former guard messing with me. But then the poster added an edit 30 seconds ago that said, "Wyatt is turning off his desk lamp now." My hand shook so violently that I nearly dropped the phone onto the linoleum floor. Nobody on this site knew my name. I was using an anonymous account I'd made 4 years ago, and there were no name tags on my uniform jacket. I swallowed hard, trying to fight down the cold wave of nausea creeping up my throat, and forced myself to look at the user profile of the original poster. The username was littlebird_1998, a hyper-specific childhood nickname that only my older sister used to call me before she drowned in the Sangamon River over 15 years ago. The account had been registered less than 10 minutes prior. Before my brain could fully process the sickening psychological shock of seeing that username, a loud, metallic scraping sound echoed from the rusted fire escape stairs attached to the side of my trailer. It wasn't the sound of work boots or sneakers on metal. It sounded like iron claws dragging slowly against the corroded steel treads, heavy and deliberate. I reached for the heavy tactical flashlight on my desk, my fingers slick with cold sweat, and pressed my back against the wall, keeping away from the glass windows. My phone vibrated again in my palm, a fresh comment popping up on the thread. "Smart move turning off the light. Wyatt, but the thermal camera sees your body heat just fine." The hair on my arms stood on end as the temperature inside the trailer plummeted so fast that my breath turned into white plumes in the dark. I raised the flashlight toward the window where the wet handprint still lingered, expecting to see a trespasser in a mask. But when the beam hit the glass, there was nothing on the exterior landing except a thick, black substance oozing down the frame, smelling faintly of stagnant river mud and decaying vegetation. The scraping noise on the metal stairs suddenly stopped, replaced by a soft, wet sloshing sound directly on the roof above my head. It moved across the corrugated metal rafters with unnatural speed, shifting back and forth like an oversized arachnid searching for an entry point. I pulled up the trailer's live security camera feed on my phone screen, my thumb trembling over the touch display, and clicked on camera 4, which pointed directly at the outer entrance door. The night vision feed flickered with heavy static, but what it captured made the air freeze in my lungs. Standing right outside my locked door was an impossibly tall, skinless entity with elongated limbs that bent backward at the elbows and knees. It was crouched in a sickening, unnatural posture, holding an antique smartphone in its pale, clawed fingers, its face featureless except for a wide tear in its gray flesh that served as a mouth, dripping the same dark river water onto the welcome mat. As I watched the screen, the creature didn't look at the door. It slowly turned its neck a full 180 degrees to stare directly into the security camera lens, its pale, milky eyes reflecting the infrared light like an animal caught in high beams. A split second later, another Reddit notification lit up my phone screen with an attached photo. I opened it with a numb thumb. The photo was a crisp, high-resolution image of the top of my own head, taken from directly inside the trailer, looking down through the air vents in the drop ceiling. My heart skipped a full beat as a low, wet gurgling sound echoed from the acoustic ceiling tiles right above my chair. The cheap white paneling flexed downward under a massive weight, cracking down the center as four gray, waterlogged fingers squeezed through the gap, reaching down toward my collar. I screamed, shoving the desk chair into the entity's path, and lunged for the trailer door, throwing the deadbolt open with a violent yank. I slammed through the exterior door, tumbling out into the freezing night air, and sprinted blindly across the gravel pit toward my Ford F-150 parked 50 yards away. The wet, rhythmic slapping of heavy limbs hitting the gravel behind me sounded like a horse galloping through a swamp, gaining on me with horrifying speed. I slammed my body into the driver's seat, jammed the key into the ignition, and roared the engine to life, throwing the truck into reverse just as two long, pale arms smashed against the windshield, leaving deep cracks in the safety glass. I floored the accelerator, spinning the tires in the loose dirt, and tore out of the terminal gate, hitting the paved county highway at 70 miles an hour without looking back. As the safety of the highway lines blurred beneath my headlights, I let out a ragged breath, leaning my head back against the headrest, convincing myself that I had somehow escaped whatever nightmare was waiting in those silos. But as I slowed down a red light 5 miles outside of town, my truck's dashboard touchscreen automatically paired with an unknown Bluetooth device. A monotone, automated Reddit text-to-speech voice suddenly blasted through my car speakers, reading a new comment from the thread. Wyatt made it to his truck, but he forgot to check the back seat before he pulled away. I froze, my eyes drifting slowly up to the rearview mirror in the dim dashboard light, meeting a pair of milky, reflectionless eyes staring back at me from the dark rear cabin, a wet hand reaching over the headrest toward my throat. At exactly 3:17 a.m., my bedroom television turned itself on at full volume, broadcasting a live Reddit video stream of myself sleeping on my own mattress. Except in the broadcast, the dark figure standing at the foot of my bed was slowly leaning over and chewing on the corner of my blanket. My eyes snapped open in the pitch-black darkness of my rented bungalow in Providence, Rhode Island, my heart hammering against my sternum as the blinding blue light from the TV screen illuminated the empty space at the foot of my bed. There's no one standing there in real life, but when I turned my head back to the television, the live stream on the screen clearly showed a towering, shadow-draped entity with distended jaws standing right over me, its mouth moving in sync with a sickening crunching noise coming from the speakers. I lunged for the remote on my nightstand, knocking over a glass of water, and smashed the power button, but the TV screen refused to turn off. The Reddit video player interface displaying a live viewer count that was rapidly climbing into the thousands, with comments flying past the side of the screen at blinding speed. To understand how I ended up in this nightmare, you have to know that 2 days ago, I moved into this 1920 Craftsman home and made a casual post on our /Ask Reddit asking, what is the most unsettling secret your old house hid from you? I had posted it after finding a small, iron-bound hatch hidden behind a built-in bookcase in the hallway, sealed shut with 3 heavy brass padlocks that looked like they hadn't been opened in half a century. The Reddit thread had blown up overnight, accumulating over 10,000 upvotes, with hundreds of users urging me to cut the locks and explore what was inside the crawl space. Against my better judgment, I bought a bolt cutter from Home Depot earlier that afternoon, snapped the rusted shackles, and pulled the heavy iron door open, finding nothing inside except a dusty, dirt-floored pit containing an old, vacuum tube radio receiver sitting on a wooden crate. I thought it was just antique junk and went to bed, but as I lay paralyzed in my room watching the TV stream, a notification popped up on my phone from a user named depth_observer that read, "You opened the hatch, Marcus. Now the broadcast can never be turned off." Goosebumps erupted across my skin as I stared at the screen. My Reddit account was completely alt-based, with no personal information, photos, or location tags connected to it. How did this random account know my name? And how are they tapping into a live video feed from inside my bedroom without a camera in sight? A sudden, heavy thump echoed from the hallway outside my bedroom door, followed by the distinctive sound of the iron crawlspace hatch slamming open against the hardwood floorboards. I grabbed a heavy metal golf club leaning against my closet wall, my hand shaking so violently that the steel shaft rattled against my knuckles, and pressed myself flat against the far wall of the bedroom. My phone vibrated again, another private message arriving from the same user. Check the comment section on your post, Marcus. They're voting on what it should do to you next. I unlocked the phone with trembling fingers, opening the r/AskReddit thread, and my blood ran completely cold. The top voted comment, sitting at 12,000 upvotes, simply said, "Break his legs first so he can't run to his car." A low, wet, dragging sound began echoing down the narrow hallway, accompanied by the smell of ozone and damp, turned-over graveyard dirt. It moved with a slow, deliberate cadence, like heavy wet meat being pulled across the floorboards inch by inch. I stared at the TV screen, where the live stream was still running with a 3-second delay. On the television display, I watched the bedroom door handle slowly rotate downward, even though the physical door in front of my actual eyes remained completely motionless and closed. The disconnect between what I was seeing in reality and what was happening on the broadcast sent a wave of dizzying vertigo through my brain. In the TV broadcast, the bedroom door swung open and the towering entity stepped into the room, raising a long, jagged iron spike above its head as it approached my sleeping form on the bed. But in real life, the room was still completely empty, save for the oppressive, freezing cold air that suddenly settled over my shoulders like a wet wool blanket. "It's not in your room yet, Marcus," a raspy, static-laden voice suddenly whispered from the TV speakers, breaking through the white noise of the broadcast. "It's occupying the space 3 seconds ahead of you." The realization hit me like a physical blow. The entity wasn't in my present moment. It was moving through the immediate future, catching up to my timeline second by second. On the TV screen, the creature slammed the iron spike down into the mattress where my legs had been resting seconds before, and at that exact moment in real life, the wooden bed frame violently splintered in half with a deafening crack, as if an invisible anvil had been dropped from the ceiling. The force of the impact threw me off my feet, sending me crashing against the nightstand as the floorboards beneath my rug groaned under an immense, unseen pressure. I didn't wait for the entity to synchronize completely with my timeline. I scrambled to my feet, threw open the bedroom window, and hurled myself out into the wet rose bushes on the side of the house, ignoring the sharp thorns tearing through my shirt and skin. I sprinted barefoot down the asphalt driveway toward my sedan, slapping my pocket frantically until my fingers clamped around the key fob. I smashed the unlock button, threw myself into the driver's seat, and slammed the door shut, locking it instantly as I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine turned over with a rough roar, and I stomped on the gas pedal, peeling out into the empty neighborhood street as the house shrunk in my side mirrors. I drove frantically for 3 miles until I reached the bright, fluorescent safety of a 24-hour mobile gas station on the edge of town, pulling into the lit parking lot next to the pumps, gasping for air as tears of pure terror leaked down my face. I sat in the idling car for 10 minutes, trying to steady my racing pulse, convincing myself that I was finally safe in the public light. But as I reached over to grab my phone from the passenger seat to call the police, the screen flickered to life on its own, opening the Reddit app automatically. A new notification from r/AskReddit popped up at the top of the screen. Poll closed. Marcus made it to the gas station. User depth_observer_0 has updated the live stream location to the mobile station pump number 4. I turned my head slowly toward the driver's side window, and there, reflected in the dark glass right outside my door, was the tall, shadowed figure standing under the gas station lights, holding the iron spike against the glass, waiting for the 3-second delay to catch up. I was moderating a late-night subreddit called r/glitch in the room when a user posted a high-resolution photo of my exact basement door with the title, "It's finally unlocked, Caleb." Right as I heard the heavy iron deadbolt on that exact door slowly slide open down the dark hallway. A cold shockwave traveled down my spine, freezing my fingers over the mechanical keyboard as I sat alone in the living room of my isolated farmhouse outside Asheville, North Carolina, surrounded by miles of dense pine forest and pitch-black mountain roads. Working remotely as a systems analyst allowed me to spend my nights moderating niche horror forums, but in all my 3 years on the site, I had never experienced anything that made my skin crawl like this. The image uploaded to the subreddit wasn't a stock photo or a generic basement door. It was a crystal clear picture taken from inside my own hallway, showing the faded yellow paint, the framed vintage poster of the Blue Ridge Mountains hanging on the wall, and the heavy oak door that led down to the stone cellar, a door I had locked with a physical key before sitting down at my desk at midnight. My eyes moved frantically across the screen, checking the profile of the submitter, a user named nobody_here99, whose account had been created less than 2 minutes ago with 0 previous posts or comments. I immediately clicked the moderate button to delete the post for violating privacy guidelines. But as soon as I hit confirm, a red error banner flashed across the screen stating, "Action denied. You cannot delete a file that is currently executing in your physical space." My breath hitched in my throat as a low, dry, creaking sound echoed from the end of the hallway, the sound of heavy oak hinges swinging open inch by inch against the hardwood floor. I reached for the heavy brass lamp on my desk, unplugging it from the wall to use as an improvised weapon, my heart hammering against my ribs with such violence that I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. I opened my mouth to shout, hoping to intimidate whoever had broken into my house, but the words caught in my throat as every light fixture in the farmhouse suddenly flickered and died, plunging the entire property into a suffocating, absolute darkness, saved only by the stark white glow of my laptop screen. A second later, my phone screen on the desk lit up with a push notification from the Reddit app. New post pinned by r/glitch in the room. Watch Caleb's webcam stream live. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I moved the mouse cursor to click the embedded link on my laptop screen, opening a private video broadcast interface that was streaming directly from my built-in computer camera. The video feed showed me sitting in my desk chair, holding the brass lamp above my shoulder, but in the dark glass of the bay window directly behind my head, the reflection didn't show the empty room. It showed a tall, featureless humanoid entity with pale, translucent skin and empty, hollow eye sockets pressing its flat face against the exterior glass from the outside patio. My blood turned to ice water as I stared at the screen, realizing that while the entity in the reflection was outside the window, the oak basement door down the hall was still standing wide open in the dark interior of my house. Suddenly, the laptop speakers emitted a low, distorted burst of static that morphed into the familiar automated text-to-speech voice used in popular horror compilations, reading a comment that had just been posted to the stream. "Caleb thinks there is only one of us." Before the automated voice could finish the sentence, the floorboards beneath my desk vibrated violently as a heavy, wet thud echoed from the dark hallway, followed by the sound of rapid, barefoot footsteps sprinting down the corridor toward the living room at a speed no human runner could ever achieve. I didn't hesitate. I swung the brass lamp with all my strength behind me, shattering the glass of the bay window, and threw my body through the broken frame, tumbling out onto the cold, damp grass of the back lawn as sharp glass shards tore through my jeans. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the searing pain in my palms, and ran blindly into the dark tree line of the surrounding forest, heading toward my nearest neighbor's cabin situated nearly a mile up the mountain road. The pitch-black woods were dead silent, except for the sound of my own ragged gasping and the crunch of dried pine needles under my sneakers. But as I reached the halfway mark through the timber, my phone in my back pocket began buzzing continuously with a barrage of Reddit app notifications. I pulled the device out while still running, glancing down at the screen in the moonlight. Dozens of comments were flooding into the thread every single second, reading like a live tracking log. He's passing the old oak tree now. He dropped his flashlight, and we are right behind his left shoulder. I force my legs to move faster, the cold mountain air burning in my lungs like fire, until the warm, amber lights of my neighbor's log cabin finally broke through the dense canopy ahead. I hurled myself onto the wooden front porch, slamming my fists against the heavy log door while screaming for help at the top of my lungs, my knees giving out beneath me as I collapsed against the welcome mat. The porch light snapped on, and my neighbor, an elderly man named Arthur holding a loaded 12-gauge shotgun, pulled the door open with a look of utter shock on his face, grabbing my arm to pull me inside the safety of his living room. "Caleb, what in God's name happened to you?" Arthur gasped, locking the heavy timber door behind us and raising the shotgun toward the porch window. I sat on his rug, shaking violently, unable to form coherent words as I held my breath, listening to the absolute quiet of the forest outside. 10 minutes passed in tense silence as Arthur watched the perimeter from his window, seeing no sign of any intruders or wild animals in the yard. I let out a long, shuddering breath, leaning my head back against his couch, allowing myself to believe for a single moment that the nightmare was over and that I was finally safe behind a locked door with an armed companion. But as I reached down to turn off my phone screen, a final push notification from the Reddit app flashed across the display, a direct message from user nobody_99 that contained no text, only a single live photo attachment. I opened the message with a numb thumb, and my stomach plummeted into a bottomless pit of pure terror as I saw the image. It was a photo taken from inside Arthur's dark kitchen, looking at the back of my head as I sat on the rug, accompanied by a single comment at the bottom that read, "Thanks for bringing us inside, Caleb.